Welcome back to Occupy the Media. I'm Jared Chikang Mayer, and I'm here with Free Speech TV's Executive Director Don Rojas and our news producer Marcy Miranda. 2012 is a big election year, and in this segment we want to talk about the election issues that impact the 99%. So via Skype, we have Timothy Carr. He's a Senior Strategy Director with freepress.net. Timothy, how are you doing there?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're doing pretty good, trudging along on our first episode of Occupy the Media. And we wanted to get your thoughts on this story out of West Virginia where a company called Century Aluminum has a bunch of its retired employees standing out in front of a closed-up plant protesting because their benefits got canceled. Do you know about this story?
Yes, I do. And it's interesting to see how the Occupy movement has morphed in many ways, and in this instance, you see people who are protesting some of the rights that they were promised as employees of this company. You know, demanding that those promises be fulfilled. And part of your earlier discussion was about how the Occupy movement has morphed to support a number of different causes. And my organization, Free Press, a couple of months ago did an Occupy event outside of the News Corp headquarters in Los Angeles, where the Occupy LA crowd came and supported an action that we were doing there. So what's happening in West Virginia, what's been happening around the world, is this kind of shows the diversity and breadth of the Occupy movement to really support these various efforts. And people have in many ways adopted the Occupy brand as part of their efforts and part of their protests as well.
And even these senior citizens and retirees, which aren't your typical, or what we'd imagine as your typical Occupy protester. And Marcy, what are they so upset about that they'd be standing out for? Has it gone on for months now that they're standing out in front of this plant?
Yeah, they're coming up on their 3-month anniversary. These people that are 60, 70, even 80 years old, just saying, I gave you Century Aluminum the best years of my life. I worked, for you for years. With the idea that when I get old and ailing and sick, that I'm going to have something to fall back on for health purposes. And now that's kind of been swept under the table from them, just taken off the table. And I think they have a right to be mad. I know I would be mad.
Yeah. Okay. Quickly, Don, you have a comment?
Well, yeah, this is an example of how, as Timothy was saying, how diversified the Occupy movement has become, how inclusive it has become, how broad it has become. It's wonderful to see 70-year-old grandmothers and grandfathers out there protesting and standing up for their rights. It's a beautiful thing.
People who have a lot of ailments because now they don't have health care. So we'll definitely have to follow this particular Occupy protest as it continues. But our next topic is about if you're one of the thousands of Americans facing foreclosure, you might have been relieved to see the headlines announcing a mortgage relief settlement. But Timothy Carr, what's really the story behind this big settlement? It seemed like, did it really hold a bunch of these banks accountable for their misdeeds that led to the housing meltdown?
I think it was, as with most of these compromises, it was pretty much a half gesture where the banks could come halfway, and the politicians who've said that they support the rights of a lot of people who have lost their mortgages and saw their houses slip between their fingers, making these demands for some kind of contrition by the banks. And what you saw here was, again, one of these half compromises. I mean, this is the reason really that the Occupy movement exists. It's that people are just tired with these sorts of political compromises that come out of Washington, are demanding some fundamental change.
But Timothy, this settlement that was reached between the Justice Department and attorney generals in some of these big banks, focusing on specific states, it was a $25 billion settlement that these big banks will have to pay out. I mean, that's not chump change, right?
It's not chump change. It's $25 billion. But when you look at the number of people who've been affected by the mortgage defaults, it actually thins out pretty quickly. And I think there are demands that there be further prosecutions. And it's important to note that the settlement doesn't vindicate a lot of the banks. There is still the potential for some sort of criminal prosecution based on the frauds that could have occurred. So I think there are a lot of people very involved in this issue that are still continuing to pursue that to make sure that this is not the end of the story. that full restitution is made, and that if laws were broken, that people are prosecuted.
Marcy?
Yeah, I have a kind of a question, Tim. I read on alternate.org that there's several states where governors are actually taking this money and using it, instead of giving it to victims of a foreclosure, they're using it to make up for some of the lost funds in their state budgets. How can they get away with this?
It's a good question. I don't think we've heard the end of this story. That they would be using it in that way, I think, is a disservice to the people who were really affected by these massive foreclosures. So this is very much a developing story. I'm following a lot of the financial reporters and a lot of the activists who've been very active in this field, and they have been clear that they don't see it really as the end game, that this is not the end of the story, and they're continuing to advocate for more complete restitution.
Okay, and so Timothy, if people want to follow your coverage of this particular story, they can go to freepress.net.
That's right, freepress.net. I also I'm on Twitter at Tim Carr.
Okay.
And we do a lot of coverage in both
Great.
those places.
Well, Timothy Carr, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we want to hear from you. To join the conversation, call us at 877-575-FSTV, post a comment on our Facebook page, or follow us on Twitter. We're going to take another quick break, but stay with us. We sent a camera crew out to hear what the 99% thinks about this recent foreclosure settlement.
A lot of my friends and family are struggling with foreclosures, and even though
Thanks.
this money is being given to the American people, I don't necessarily think that it's doing it on a high enough level.
Families across America are struggling. So to trivialize it at 26, billion, that it just doesn't seem adequate.
The majority of people who are in so much debt, it chips away at it, but it doesn't chip enough where it actually makes a difference.
I know I'm struggling with rent. Everyone I know is struggling with rent. There could be a lot more done.
But the bottom line is you have a chaotic situation with families being disrupted, people unemployed, housing market crumbling, you're not going to college on that second equity. So there's a lot of things that they need to straighten out.
I don't sense that they're going to do the right thing unless we make them do the right thing.
Hello, I'm Antoinette June, and this is your Occupy update. On February 29th, Occupy Portland is calling for a day of nonviolent direct action to shut down the corporations. This day of action will take place at corporations across the nation. For more information, please visit shutdownthecorporations.org.